Hey, quick disclaimer, there's a very high chance I call her Morgana for most of the video. That's just what I'm used to calling her from watching TV shows like BBC's Merlin and things like that. Also, a quick disclaimer, if my voice sounds horrible, it's because of allergies. I'm sorry about that, but I need to get this video out to you today. So, Morgana Le Fay is a god I've been asking for in the game ever since they added King Arthur and set the precedent that legends could be added to the game. Arthur and Merlin are super fun to play in my opinion, so I had high hopes for Morgana when they teased her in the god reveal trailer for Season 8. To summarise my thoughts on Morgana in a few words, she's really fun, but not in the way I was hoping for. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, Morgana in lore was often depicted as sort of morally ambiguous, like a trickster almost, who rarely took fights head on but would use her ingenuity to cause chaos from afar, and like indirectly and things like that, such as when she stole the scabbard of Excalibur from King Arthur so he wasn't protected by it anymore. Whereas in Smite's depiction, she's basically just depicted as pure evil, both in visual design and also in her kit. In the comparison to her stealing the scabbard of Excalibur from King Arthur in the Legends, if we were using the Smite design, she'd just blast him into oblivion with some magical energy, which I feel like is just a bit less of a faithful design to her. I'm not saying I don't like her design, I do. The floating sword, the animations, they're all great, but I feel like they could have gone in a different direction and been even better. Though it's possible they didn't want too much overlap with Discordia, whose core design is also that sort of trickster with ambiguous morals style character. In terms of her actual ability designs though, which is like 90% of what I care about with the new god release, she seems super fun to play. Since returning to Smite, I've probably played a solid 15 games on her or so, out of maybe 30 in total, and I'm definitely not bored of her yet. Her abilities seem to flow really well with each other, and one thing I noticed that might have been on purpose is that none of her abilities slow her down or self-root when casting. Think about Hebos 3 for example, he's like mini-rooted for about half a second on cast. All of Morgana's abilities, as far as I'm aware, give her no movement penalties at all. Not even a strafe penalty like many abilities give. In fact, I believe her ultimate specifically removes strafe and backpedal penalties similar to Medusa. This, combined with her lack of mobility, gives her a pretty interesting playstyle defensively, as she has to use her self-heal with the fear and the knock-up while utilising her standard movement at the same time as casting. It makes her surprisingly hard to dive, and you would think looking at her kit that she would be sort of an Anubis style god that's very weak to dives. It's honestly somewhat the opposite. She can very easily turn a dive in her favour, or at least buy a few seconds for her team to show up. However, as much as I can praise this design, I do have this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I had hoped she would be more CC focused with a bit less damage and perhaps even viable in support, given how she acts in mythology. Right now it feels like she's Merlin with how much raw damage she can throw out downrange, and Morgana and Merlin act very different in the Legends in the way they approach things, yet they honestly play very similar in game, aside from the stance switching of course, but they're both just somewhat unsafe high damage mages. So before we move on to balance, I have one design gripe with Morgana's kit, the rest I find very fun and well designed, and it's her one. Is it just me, or is there literally never any reason to use anything except the fear with this ability? You'll have seen this in the background gameplay if you were paying attention, but I literally only ever use the fear, because why would I want a decoy or a slow over a fear, one of the best CCs in the game? This to me just feels like wasted design space, and the ability may as well not have this added functionality and just be a fear, to be honest. I'd like to see the other two options be made actually useful in some situations, like maybe the slow also leads to damage over time area afterwards, so it's better for wave clear and for objectives, but you could still use the fear on gods, and maybe the decoy could do something else as well. I don't know, I'm not the designer, I'm just a guy who talks shit on YouTube, but this ability feels like the fear is the only one I ever want to use, and that's bad design in my opinion. When you have a branching option in an ability, each option has to be of similar power level and or usefulness in different situations. Think Wukong's 72 transformations. Each of the tiger, ox and bird will all get used in one match, and there are clear situations where one is better than the other two. Imagine how boring Wukong would be if the bird was the only one that was ever worth using. But anyway, rant over. Let's move on to a different rant, her balance point. So it's no surprise at this point that Morgana is a bit overtuned, but where are her problems coming from and how could they be solved? In my opinion, a majority of her problems come from her ultimate. This ability deals absolutely ridiculous damage, it's over 1000 base and like almost 200% scaling or something dumb. More than the average mage ult for sure. It has insane range. The range isn't specifically listed on the ability for some reason, but it looks like at least 70 units, perhaps even a little bit more. Gives 4 seconds of CC immunity, which is definitely overlooked, and heals for up to 45% of missing health. Now granted, that's missing health and not maximum health, so you're never going to actually get even close to 40% of your health bar back, but ulting at low HP can easily get you 25 to 30% of your health, especially if the enemy keeps hitting you back down in between shots so you get more of that missing health. This ability is fine design-wise, you just need to nerf one or two areas of it. If you want the big burst heal from low health to remain, then nerf the damage or the range. If you want the range to stay the same, nerf the heal or the damage, etc, etc, you get the idea. Something needs toning down on this ability though. As for the rest of her kit, I think it's pretty fine. The range on her 3 is a bit much and could go down by 5 or 10 units and I wouldn't complain. The cooldown increase on her 1 was absolutely needed, and to be honest you could even make it 13 or 14 seconds and it would still be strong. Especially if you did what I suggested earlier and made the other options more useful, you might want to increase the cooldown in tow to balance that out. And finally, one small buff I would actually give to Morgana is the second hit of Dragonflight coming out a little bit faster. As it is right now, it basically is impossible to hit a god with this unless you're point blank and hit the first knock up to confirm it. I'm not saying speed it up so much that you can reliably hit it from max range on gods, but if they're closer to you and or you can predict their movement, I think you should be able to possibly land this from range and not be forced to only use it close up, since that seems to go a bit against Morgana's design of having great range and poke. But anyway, that's my initial thoughts on Morgana, a god I have really wanted in the game for a long time, and I would say they mostly delivered. As I said, I would have liked to see them lean more on her ambiguous loyalties and morals a bit, and more like influencing the fight indirectly rather than just being a burst mage, but the kit they did make is super fun to use, so I can't complain too much. If this same kit was on a god I had less attachment to in terms of lore, then I likely wouldn't bat an eye and would just say it was a fun design. Let me know your thoughts on Morgana down below, both in terms of design aspects and balance, and I will catch you guys in another video later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.